You can tell guitar solo.
What?
Do the guitar solo.
Oh.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
thank you. You know, that was written for Oscar Treadwell.
I'm sorry, I don't know who Oscar Treadwell is.
Well, actually, you know, Parker wrote a tune called An Oscar for Treadwell. And he was a DJ in Cincinnati. I think this was written for a memorial concert for him. He passed away maybe 10, 12 years ago, something like that. And he was a DJ in Cincinnati, WNOP. He was sort of a jazz historian type of guy. And Rick Van Mater at the conservatory asked me if I'd write something for the memorial concert.
Oh,
So I wrote this.
it's so beautiful, and it's so the use of space and melodic line continuing through is quite beautiful. It's it's interesting about good music. The moment it starts playing, it's good. It's like two notes or something, and then as it continues, it's I think it's from where the creator is coming from. I really do. I've thought about this a lot,
Hmm.
and so because as a booking person, I've gotten hundreds of tapes from people, or people
Yeah.
send me stuff, and like within two notes, like I know if it's going to be good. And so I've thought about it a lot, but I really do believe it's the creator has created this thing, and it comes to you, and you start listening, and there it is. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, it was interesting. There's a little bit of a backstory to this. It's quite interesting. When I was very young and starting to get into jazz, and I discovered this radio station, the only way I could hear the radio station was in my dad's car, like later in the afternoon or whenever it was on. I think he had a Sunday afternoon show, and I
Yeah.
would go out, and my dad would always say, "Don't run down the battery." But I'd go and I'd listen to the show, and I remember listening to Oscar Treadwell talk about jazz, and so my whole first kind of introduction to the world of jazz when I was like 12 or 13, something like that. That was where I got, that kind of vibe was from Oscar on Sunday afternoons in my dad's car, listening, so listening to Oscar, and that's kind of where the title came from.
By the way, why did you have to go to your dad's car? Why couldn't you listen in your house?
There wasn't a good enough, the radios in the house didn't have good enough reception. Something about the car had better reception. This was like in the 1960s, so, yeah, not a lot of reception out there in the country. I grew up in a town, very small town, like 900 people,
Where did you grow up?
Pittsburgh, Ohio, which is like about an hour and a half east
Uh-huh.
east of Cincinnati.
Okay.
So the signal, coming up, through whatever east of Cincinnati was not that strong. We were probably on the outer edges of AM radio, because I think it was AM radio at that time.
Oh yeah, right.
It was FM, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I don't think FM really existed, did it?
yeah, so it was really a trick, to get the radio show.
Did you grow up in a musical household?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
My dad was a pretty good singer, and he could whistle like crazy. That was one thing that I always remembered about him. But no, there was no music in my immediate family. My grandmother did play the piano, and we had a piano in our house. So when she came to visit, she would play, and I was very young, and kind of when she would leave, I'd try to imitate what she did, that kind of thing. So I got involved in music immediately from playing the piano, and hearing my grandmother play, kind of like the source, right? The source of sound. So that was interesting, that there was no music in my house. But I was really into it. My mom would always kind of buy records and, Columbia library,
Columbia, yep,
like the monthly record of the month type.
yep, yep.
And, she just was very random. I had a really good piano teacher and a good voice teacher when I was young. So starting around the age of 12.
Did I know you sang?
Yeah,
I knew that.
no, I think so. I used to sing a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't really remember that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mike and I have known each other for many years. He used to live in LA, and
Yeah,
yeah,
since 1980.
yeah, there you go. And yeah,
Yeah.
and then when did you move to New York?
Uh, well, let's see. I was in LA from 80 till, I was there from 80 to 83. Then I was in Chicago for 3 years doing commercials and working in the jingle business for about 3 years. And I came back to LA in 86. I think in 86 is when you and I started working together a lot more, just doing gigs and
Yeah.
clubs and this and that. Um, and I was in LA from 86 then till 2002. I came to New York in 2002.
2002. God.
Jeez, right?
That doesn't seem possible somehow that you've been gone that long.
No, it's like 18 years. It's like I was in LA for 20 years. And now I've been here almost 18 years.
Wow.
I'm getting old.
Shit, man, aren't we all?
Yeah. But it feels like it was just like yesterday. Oh yeah, I moved to LA, I moved to New
I
York.
know. I know, because sometimes I'll say your name, to somebody who I think probably knows you, and they're like, "No, I don't know him," and I'm like, "Really? Yeah." I guess they weren't involved with us at that time, you know. You know
Yeah,
what I always wanted to find, which I never found? Remember that beautiful arrangement you did of my husband's father's music, Gonzalo Curiel?
I remember that and I looked for it and I can't find it anywhere.
Yeah, Vereda Tropical.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, that was such a beautiful arrangement that you did for my student. And
I should redo it. Yes,
yeah, it's really a beautiful song.
it is.
We
Yeah.
should we should redo that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still remember the sound of my mother-in-law singing that,
Isn't
because
that
she was a bolero singer, right? So,
wow?
very sweet, beautiful. I was
Yeah.
talking with Diane Reeves a few days ago on here, and
I saw that. I just was able to peek in for a minute. Yeah.
yeah, so when Diane came here, she was like 19, and she played with Billy Childs and my brother-in-law. Remember my brother-in-law, Joey Heredia, on drums?
I do.
And so, anyway, she got to know my mother-in-law. And so we were talking about my mother-in-law, and you can find my mother-in-law online and singing and stuff.
Wow.
Not you don't see her, but you can find her records and really beautiful, beautiful. A bolero thing.
Valera. Oh, I'd like to hear that. You should send me a link.
I will. I'll
Yeah.
make a
Yeah.
note. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you were coming up, so did you have this driving passion for piano or some kind of, were you in the rock scene at all, or did you totally, what?
You mean pre-college? Yeah, when I was in high school, actually, I was studying voice when I was in high school from about the age of 12. I started.
I wow, slap my behind. I am so like not, I'm not, I don't remember. I really apologize.
Yeah, I don't know if there are any songs on my SoundCloud page. Probably not. Uh, but I was pretty serious about singing, and I was studying like the usual light classical things that everybody studies.
Wow.
And I actually got into the conservatory as a voice major.
Oh my God, Michael.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I studied for about a year and a half there at the conservatory, and then I had met David Matthews, the jazz guy,
Yeah.
and I started studying jazz piano with him my freshman year, and hanging out with him and going to his band rehearsals and meeting all the jazz guys. And I said, what is with this voice study? So I said, I got to change my degree to composition. So I did.
Oh,
So it was pretty short lived, but I kept singing, and actually I recorded a bit later on. Was in the 60s and 70s. Everybody was writing songs, and
you have to send me some, would you?
I will. Yeah, maybe a private exchange. So
Okay.
I think you'll hear the training. I mean, I trained like crazy, and I became a very uh, good singer for madrigal singers and choir. I did all that when I was in the conservatory, and I learned a great deal from that. That was a really wonderful experience to be singing, both Renaissance music and chamber choir music. And I was in the elite choir.
That's
So
something very unique about you. I have not talked to anyone who had that kind of background.
yeah, it was pretty deep. I was actually, it looked like I might change my degree not to composition, but to choral conducting because I was so into that kind of that world. But then composition was kind of it for me. And it's funny because when I didn't start out as like a young kid wanting to be a composer. That never ever was in my mindset. Only kind of after I started hanging out with David and becoming aware of music and I started studying composition. Then I thought, oh, this is like the greatest puzzle in the world. It's like, yeah, let's do this.
That's cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so, okay, so little moving forward. So when I met you, I mean, those were the days when we worked a lot here in
Oh
LA.
yeah.
And so you were playing a lot of piano.
Oh man, I was playing so much piano, it wasn't even funny. Um, and it was all work. It was all club dates and casuals and weddings, and I really staying alive. Just paying the rent and
Yeah.
moving forward. And
And you
but
were getting into arranging.
well, I was quite into it. I had just come out of Eastman. I got my master's in 1978 and 79. Graduated in 80, and I was really loaded for bear. I was ready to do film or arranging or composition, whatever. Of course, there was the breaking in process. It was just incredibly hard. I didn't know many people in LA. I did know a few former Eastman colleagues, um, Steve Bramson, Joel McNeely, Bob Shepard, and
Clay Jenkins or
pardon?
Clay Jenkins, was he in part of that crowd?
Yeah, I didn't know Clay at that point,
Yeah.
but yeah, I got to know all those cats. But I was working, trying to get writing, and I got a little bit of a break with Jack Elliott. I had written an orchestra piece when I was at Eastman, and I pitched it to him, and he liked it, and he actually picked it to be on one of his big studio orchestra concerts
Hmm.
at the LA Phil.
Wow.
So yeah, that was huge, huge, you know. So actually, I shared that concert with David Raxon had a piece on that concert, and
Mm.
Henry Mancini had a piece on that concert.
Oh,
So
wow.
I got to meet. Like, oh, gosh, hang on, there, my phone is acting on its own. Uh,
That happens.
yeah, but it was the reality check was, I worked really hard. I got to meet a lot of these guys. Shelly Manne played drums on it. Alan Broadbent played piano,
Oh,
and it was
yeah,
a big band. It was like ridiculous,
yeah.
and uh, got a nice response. And then after that, I started working for Jack a little bit. Actually, uh, Alf Clausen and I worked on some pilots together for
Oh,
Jack Elliott. One was with geez, Gladys Knight and the Pips they were trying to build some kind of special thing with them. It didn't fly, but And I worked with Burt Bacharach doing some ghostwriting and some orchestration stuff, just very general things. Um, and so things were starting to develop um, between 1980 and 1983. But then one of my former classmates at Eastman, Manny Mendelsohn, who's an extraordinary pianist and writer, he got a gig in Chicago doing jingles, and they needed another guy. So he called me up in 1983 and he says, "Hey, if you want to come audition, do some orchestrations and arrangements for us and produce a track, there might be a gig here, a salaried gig, not just a gig, a salaried gig." And I said, "Well, sure. I'm just I'm just playing bars here." So, because it's just like the day after your big concert at the LA Phil, you're back down in Orange County playing some bar with a singer. It's like, well, wait a minute, what's wrong with this picture? Well, that's the music business, man.
Yeah. So
So
then you went to
I
Chicago.
went to Chicago,
Obviously, you got it, right?
at the gig, and I was married at the time, and my wife was okay with moving, especially since I was going to be on salary. And I don't think I've made as much money since on a yearly basis, because for about 3 years, that company was really roaring, and I was pretty much in the studio 6 days a week.
Wow.
Unbelievable, right?
Yeah, that must have been fun.
Even singing on jingles like Union after SAG.
Wow.
You're okay. We need choir on this. Can you sing? Yeah. Okay. Come in, sing. It was ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah. So I kind of got my chops together there in Chicago, learning how to write fast. When you're writing for jingles, it's usually boom, boom, boom. You're writing two or three things. It's got to be done in a couple of days or a day. And there's a lot of work up to that. It's scary when you say a day, but usually there's a lot of kind of lead time because you're working with clients and you're deciding on what the jingle is going to sound like. But then there is a point where you finally get the film and you have to do the spot. So, and the timelines are very short. But we did. I got my writing chops together there, which when I came back to LA and started working in film, man, that was the most valuable training I ever got. I think, as far as learning how to turn something around, be economical, do it quickly.
Yeah. Why did that gig end?
Oh, it's like every company, in jingles. It's like they have peaks and valleys. This was sort of at the end of that curve. 83 to 86 were kind of like the peak of the Reagan years of, corporations like spending money like crazy. And they were, that particular company I was working with, Comtrack, they were hiring a lot of people. And, as the pace kind of came down, they had to start letting people go. So um, I kind of saw how that was going to go. So we had to make another plan. We had to decide whether we wanted to move down to New York or come back to LA. And I think going back to LA was the right choice at that time. Although there was a lot of discussion about moving to New York at that time. So, but
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, and almost any, it's like having a TV show. If it runs for 1 or 2 seasons, that's a lot. If it runs for
Yeah.
10 seasons, holy crap, that's a
Yeah.
career.
Yeah. Such an interesting part of the career. And I've never really been a big studio singer. I've done the occasional thing here and there, but yeah, it's just such. It's almost like a whole different career.
It is. It is. I always enjoyed studio work, and I'm good at it. So I enjoy putting things together and hearing them performed, and try to make it as musical as possible.
Yeah.
But I love
Um,
live performance too. So
and you like Bevan Manson. You write for like you write for hire for instance, string quartets or people who want you to compose or arrange.
it depends. I mean, we were so lucky. Bevan and I both went through that Eastman experience, and the kind of writing training we got there was almost to be able to do just about anything and do it well. I mean, that was there's no dilettante kind of quality to anything that a writer does that comes out of Eastman. It's always pretty focused, you know. So if you're asked to write a Broadway show, you can do it, you know, or do an orchestra piece or write for a string quartet, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's actually, I'd like to
Further.
listen to something else too. Uh, let's see. So I'm listening on SoundCloud. Mike has a SoundCloud that I put his the website of, and then you can just go to playlists, and you can see what might be a good. There's let's see, Patterson jazz piano, song arrangements, big band compositions, a question of balance, work for
Why
big
don't you
band.
play? Well, we just heard a big band thing.
There's also for film.
Yeah, let's see. Where is that? It's been a while since I've been on here.
Yeah, here, let me share my screen and then you can see. Um, there's this music for film right here.
Oh, okay. Hang on. Yeah. Oh, let's see what's in there. Ah, music for film. Yeah, sure. Why don't you play? I think the film cue. That's a shorter cue. It might be worth doing, or that, and then maybe the things below it would be the three cues called WBN. But the film cue from this is from Attack of the Hawkmen. This is a young Indiana Jones cue that I did for a film for that TV show.
Okay, cool. Here we go.
Teams down 69 individuals that have gone down into the county to
Ah,
Beautiful.
yeah, it was kind of an adventure to do that, do some music for one of those young Indiana Jones series. You know, the young Indiana Jones is always getting in trouble. So.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. It's funny because the idea of the word Q makes you think it's short, which it is relatively short, right? 4 minutes or something.
Yeah, this one's longer than I thought it was. I thought it was a different cue. So
Yeah, but I mean, it's a lot of music. It's a lot of writing. Woo.
it is, and timelines are pretty short, also in film. Uh, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, a lot of it was a lot of work to work on these young Indiana Jones things. Joel McNeely was one of was the composer along with Larry Rosenthal, but there were also several other composers that were contributing to every show. There was just too much music to be written. It's
Yeah.
like you get a series like that, and the timelines are short. And, you can sketch out a few ideas or put some themes out there, but eventually you need some people to contribute cues to the shows. So Joel was generous and invited me to contribute a bit of music to one of those that Attack of the Hawkmen show, and and the other show that Radioland Murders, that was the WBEBN things, were like short play on playoffs for this is a feature film, which was a lot of fun to work on, and but it was a stylized thing, like all film music. Usually it has to do with the period of time, or the or a particular character. There's all kinds of different ways to approach writing a score, but
Speaking of that, I'm curious about something because I've interviewed other people who write. Like actually, just this week, I talked to Phil Giffen. Do you know him?
no, I don't know, Phil.
He's LA based, and he works a lot for Disney.
No.
Um, but anyway, so my question is, personalities in writing. I mean, are they is the music really different from writer to writer, or from orchestrator to orchestrator? Like if you got 10 piano players in the room and you had them play, they'd pretty much all have their own voice, right?
Yeah.
So is it like that, or is there a little bit more similarity, like in the genre of whatever?
Well, if you're talking about film specifically, um, the composer's job is really kind of an underscore job. It's not like you're not like writing your own concert piece.
Yeah.
You're writing something that serves the film. So there has to be a certain theatrical approach that you take that somehow supports the film. It may be original. I mean, Jerry Goldsmith or John Williams or you know James Horner, God bless him. Um, all those guys would have a similar approach to the film. They would just have a different set of they would make different decisions about how to handle sort of like, if it's an adventure film, how to handle sort of like the largeness of it. Um, but there are certain things that I would say are similar, um, and the character comes more out of your inventiveness with themes, how you handle the harmony, um, how close you can get to telling the story. That's the hard part, getting the mood right.
Yeah.
So they might all achieve getting the mood right, but they're going to do it differently. It's just there are a lot of metaphors for that, but basically, you have to get something correct to begin with, And then after that, it's all your skill sets. How much of a reference do you have in terms of other film scores or other classical pieces of music that maybe apply to the
Yeah.
drama?
It's kind of like what I mean. You probably some of what you're saying. It's like uh, if I was teaching a class of scatting, I would tell them the different tools to use, and so there would be like just let's say theoretically 5 set of tools, and then everybody uses those tools, but they do it in their own unique way.
I think that's true. Um, I mean, when you're improvising within a progression, there's some things you can do and some things you really should not do. You
Right,
know, it's
right,
like,
right.
so, uh, it's a similar thing in film. It's a form, right?
Yeah,
And there are certain expectations also. And if you're writing Hollywood film music, those expectations become more narrow. If you're writing, say, uh, a film that's outside of the Hollywood formula, that's when your voice really becomes even more important. Your unique quirkiness or your unique way of treating something. That's why a lot of younger composers are doing indie films, independent films,
yeah,
to begin with, because either A, they don't have the skill sets to write a John Williams type of score, or they just prefer to work in a medium where the films are a little more interesting.
yeah,
Um, and we see that a lot in TV too. Sometimes the show is so quirky that the composer has a lot of room to really develop things, and the producers or directors are more than willing, if the show is being successful, they're more than willing to give you some reign, some creative reign. Um, so I mean, I find film scoring really, really interesting, and I think it's starting to develop a new turn now. I think we maybe feature films have gone through their Marvel Comics phase, where everything is sort of like beating you over the head with sound design and volume and impact. Just almost as if you're kind of in a big sound chamber and all they do is keep hitting you with noise, right? So I think, a lot of TV films and a lot of new productions coming out of like Netflix or Hulu or whoever's making films that are independent, Amazon even. Some of the things are really, really interesting. Some of the scores are just gorgeous, and they've come up with budgets. Like I've been watching this show called Penny. It's Penny Dreadful,
pretty
right?
dreadful. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's on Amazon, I think. Um,
Um,
Showtime, maybe Showtime. And
yeah,
whoa, man, the score to that, the guy is like, he's pulling on things from Jerry Goldsmith's like Chinatown, and he's got a nice harmonic language, and yet it's sometimes things are unexpected. So he's got a real uh, feeling for the show, which is the show is very quirky and unpredictable. Uh,
yeah,
but it's a well written show, well acted, it's
right.
beautiful film,
Beautiful. Yeah,
pacing is amazing.
yeah,
So, I mean, those are all things that a composer looks for. Give me give me a scene that's got some form to it, and I'll write you a decent piece of music.
yeah.
Um, but it's
That one also has Latin influences, the new
yeah,
one, right?
oh yeah, it's all about that growing, sort of like we're talking about Hollywood, so it's all about those early days in Hollywood where
Yeah.
all that power struggle between you know uh,
Pachucos and yeah,
and the ethnic communities, and the rich landowners, and who's going to build the freeways and who's going to control
yeah,
the water, and
yeah,
who's going to control, actually, they even talk about the streetcars being bought up by the auto industry that even let that slip. So it's yeah,
Like, oh boy, we're surprised by that.
yeah. So
Yeah,
anyway,
welcome to LA, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah. Back to your point. You know, writing for film, it's a dramatic. It's essentially a theater type of activity. So if you're being asked to support what's going on in the film, there's so much going on in the film. The story's being told, you're following the characters, you're making judgments about, you know, everything else, the scenery, the, you know, the basically the time of the film, you know, and then your job as a composer is to try to navigate all this and make sure that it all works in some kind of musical way, which I think assumes a lot. And some people have a very natural ability to score film and see scenes and make them work. I mean, you know, we can name half a dozen guys that I know that I've had the pleasure of working with, like Steve Bramson, and Joel McNeely, and Bruce Broughton. Oh my gosh, and Leonard Rosenman, I had the great pleasure of working with Leonard on his last big film. And he was unbelievable how fast he could write and accurately, you know, create or just create great music, you know. So you know, George Bird, I've known so many cats. Dwayne Tatro, he's still alive. So yeah, it's there's an art form to it, and all of these musicians that I'm naming are very skilled people. They're very, you know, very studied, and you know, they busted their butts their whole lives to make the art form work. You know.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. It's
Yeah.
wonderful to learn more and more about it, you know, and which is one nice thing about uh, one positive thing about, you know, the COVID stuff. You get to hear a lot of interviews, and you get more information. You know, you're finding out. I am. I mean, all of the people that I've been. You're number 86. So yeah, so I've been learning so much, and I mean, there are things that strike me on a human level too, but just the actual information, like what you were just talking about. You know, of course, I know part of that because I'm a professional musician and I've been around people like you for a long time. But really, to get your point of view and some kind of inner view of it, which you have, which I don't have. So it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, of course, I've been teaching film scoring now for a bunch of years at NYU. So a lot of the students that come to me are brilliant in the way that they see a scene and can score it. I mean, just absolutely like they're teaching me. But then there are some who are just making big mistakes. It's just like, no, this does not work. Let's talk about why it doesn't work. You know, like a like a bad improvisation. Right? It's like, well, no,
Yeah.
no, it's, you know, if you resolve them, okay, but just
Speaking of students, there's a lot of people who have joined, but one person has made a few comments who
oh,
was a student of yours at CSLA, John Balbuena.
John Balbuena, holy cow, talented guy. Yeah,
He's a talented player too.
haven't heard that name in a while. Yeah, say hello. Yeah,
Hey, John, you're listening. He's saying hello. He lives kind of near me too, actually.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's when I first started teaching. Kind of phasing myself out of the film business there in LA. Uh, even though I didn't know that's what was going on, it was kind of happening. Even if I had made that decision, it was going to happen anyway. So, uh, but the TV show I was working on, the last show I did was for 7 years. I did a show called Jag with Steve Bramson. And boy, we had a ball with that show. We had like a 35, 45 piece orchestra every week. It was 25 or so weeks out of the year. I was tied up with that show, and maybe 10 minutes of music, might be 15 minutes of music for an hour show each week. So it was a real hump to get the music done for that show. But that show was like at the end of its cycle, you know. It had
Yeah.
run for 10 years. I actually moved to New York and I was still doing the show. So it
Oh,
afforded
wow.
here. Yeah, I was still doing it long distance. I could send files back and forth. But maybe 6 months after I was back in New York, the show ended. So yeah, so it was probably the right move at the right time. I was going to tell you, John Balbuena, that I I really started teaching out at Cal State LA. I was also teaching at the High School for the Arts there, and they found out I was teaching at the High School of Arts, and it was in the same campus. It was on the same building as the music department, and they saw what I was doing with the kids, and actually hired me to teach at the university level. So
Oh,
yeah, I just was like, boom, it's like meet me at Jim and Andy's. And it's the same kind of thing. I think the mistake and one of the big problems I think with the music business right now is that people don't interact in a social way the way they used to. I remember Bob Shepard saying that he used to just go to Carmelo's because he needed to pick up his next gig. It was like a lot of guys would say that, hey, you should come over and hang out, you know, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or whenever at Carmelo's because guys have gigs. They're looking for help, or they're looking for people, or they can recommend you, or you're in the kind of the environment. It's like we're like bees pollinating. It's like we need to be around each other to kind of have our careers. Every time I've gotten a gig, it's been from a friend or somebody who introduced me to somebody. So it wasn't by sending an email or even sending a cassette tape or CD or link. You don't get gigs like that, right? Yeah. So
that's funny. Yeah, it's so true.
yeah,
When people call me, because a lot of people tend to call me when they come to town because somebody said call Cathy Segal-Garcia. She knows a lot of people, and then they're like, "Well, how do I get a gig right away?" I'm like, "Well, really, it's going to take about a year. That's my point of view. It could take longer, and you have to go out and make friends with people. You have to go hear people and talk to them. Wow, that was really nice. I really liked blah blah blah. And oh, who are you? And I just moved to town and blah. You know, it is a personal thing. And
yeah,
I mean, everybody I've talked to says that. It's that there's one thing that people keep moving. It's like you want to do something and you put one foot in front of the other and you keep doing it, and while you're doing it, you are meeting people and people are seeing what you're doing, and it just keeps moving, and that's how people get to do what they want to do. There's no other.
yeah. I think you clarify your intention also when you talk with somebody about who you are, what you're doing, what you want to do. They can really get like you were saying earlier in our conversation. After you hear them speak one or two sentences, you go, oh, okay, I know who this person is. I would, if I can help them, I'll try. And most
Yeah.
musicians are like that. We're very empathetic people. I think we're very accommodating. And I think the thing about the internet, I mean, although this is fantastic to be able to talk about these things, but I think there is that that personal connection that will get you the gig. You know, I mean, I think if I had just sent a tape to Jack Elliott and said, "Well, here's my new orchestra piece," and that was it, I wouldn't have gotten the gig. He said, "Well," I called him up. He said, "Well, why don't you come over and we can meet and talk?" I went over. I did my usual thing of seeing kind of what things was he interested in, and kind of just having a conversation. And he saw that I was not some ogre with 3 humps on my back, and that I that I knew what I was doing, and he liked my piece. And he called me up the next day and he said, "You got the gig. You're on the program. We'll see you, and we'll start talking about that in about a month." And then he started calling me for all these little side gigs. So he liked me, and that's important. And I don't know how we get that going. I mean, I like my students a lot. I've always really enjoyed my students, and some of them have been friends. I've had friends that were students, for 15 years now. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and you know, I keep thinking they're going to hire me. So,
I saw one thing that I wanted to play on SoundCloud. It was
sure,
Louisa for jazz,
hear that.
right? Jazz something.
Yeah, is with Gene Bertoncini. It's my arrangement of Louisa for Gene Bertoncini and string quartet, and bass.
Okay. Shall I
Yeah,
start?
yeah, and I think Mark Copeland might be on this also. But
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay. beautiful.
Yeah.
To be one of the best songs ever, right?
It's such a great song. I remember going to hear Gene. Gene used to do a lot of solo gigs around town, Gene Bertoncini.
Yeah.
And one day, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Ah. One day I went down one evening to hear him play, and he said I'm going to play this tune called Louisa, and I oh okay, let's hear that. And he played through it, and I said, holy cow, I got to at some point I did something for him uh, on that tune, and so I was writing. I was going to do a whole album of just string quartet and guitar and piano with Gene, and so I ended up doing three or four tunes, uh, and then I don't know, something came up and I didn't finish it up. But I've got a couple more charts that are all ready to go. That the one thing, My Foolish Heart was meant for this record,
Oh,
and also I did something on a Chopin mazurka, which was done. So I've got all the material. I just need to get back in the studio. And but Gene played beautifully on it, and Sarah Caswell is the violinist. The string quartet's just as killer. New York string quartet. It's Sarah, Judy Kang played the second violin on this, although she's a concert artist. Lois Martin played viola, and Jody Redhage Ferber played cello. Um,
married to a Ferber?
yeah, married to Alan Ferber.
Oh, cool.
And Ike Sturm played bass, and Mark Copeland played piano. And I conducted.
Copeland. I'm a fan of Mark Copeland's actually.
Yeah,
Um, Caswell, is that the sister of the really good singer?
Rachel. Yeah, Sarah's an amazing violinist. Yeah,
Yeah, what is her first name again? Rachel?
Rachel.
Yeah, I remember her. I need to look her up again because she, you know how you kind of come across people and then you don't. But I heard her sing it was maybe a Jen or IAJE.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. She
yeah,
has done some things there. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Rachel and Sarah had a group together for a while, I think. But Sarah's boy, she's just blossomed into this amazing soloist.
Yeah.
And so I used her on this as much as I could possibly. Uh,
You know, I actually did see Gene in January at the Jazz Congress,
wow.
and he was being interviewed, and I can't remember by who, but it was a person that you and I probably both know, a musician, but who was interviewing people for maybe a podcast or something. Anyway, I said hi to Gene, but he didn't really remember me. He's a little up there in age, and but it was really good to see him, and he's
He's
a
80,
great musician.
80 something. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
this whole album we did, the one of the tunes, I did an album with him called Concerti. And that's also, I don't know if there are any tracks on here of that, but it's available.
Oh,
And it
cool.
might even be on Spotify. I don't know, it might be around. Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
I don't see Concerti per se, on your playlist, but
Yeah, I don't think, well, let me see here. I've got my site open here.
um, so let's talk too about your. This was a funny situation. So Mike had done these arrangements of Cole Porter songs,
Yeah,
and he called me up and he explained that the project had originally been done for a particular singer, and for one reason or another, um, had been let go from that singer, and he thought that I could sing it. So I took it in the studio, and I was, singing through the arrangements, beautiful, beautiful Cole Porter arrangements. I mean, for Cole Porter songs, and that didn't actually connect and fly. So the next thing I knew,
with the executive producer, not
right,
with me. I was fine,
yeah,
but
but the
he wasn't buying it.
right, for whatever reason. And the next thing I knew, my dear friend, who lives on my street, by the way, just like a mile away,
Wow.
um, Calabria Foti, who's a really beautiful singer and violinist, she says to me, "Oh, yeah, I'm doing this really nice project uh, with Michael Patterson arrangements of Cole Porter." And I'm like, oh, okay. And so, anyway, that turned out to be incredible. And her husband, Bob McChesney, who's a great trombone player and arranger, and they have a studio. And they worked on that, you and them, and that turned out wonderfully.
Yeah, that album, I'm really proud of that record. I mean, Bob put a lot of time into it, kind of helping mix and master and tweak it here and there. We had the basic tracks all done. You heard the tracks,
Yeah.
but it was a long process. The the first singer on it, just she. I mean, I was happy to do the project. It was more of a favor to my executive producer, but I wanted to put some time into it. I said, "Well, I'll do it for you, but you're going to have to give me enough time to write the charts the way I want to. So I'm not just going to put some head charts up here, whatever. So I'm going to. So actually, the way that whole record got made, it took about a year before we got all the charts done. And towards the end of it, I would have Gene Bertoncini come over to my house, and we'd work with the singer and tweak the arrangements. So, over the course of about a year, we got through all the charts. Then we had to do all these rehearsals with the singer. She just really wasn't making it, just wasn't happening. But the executive producer was insistent to make this record with this singer. So we actually did the sessions. That's where the tracks came from. Did the sessions with that singer in a booth, of course, and because I knew it really wasn't going to work. But hey, we got it done and played it for me. He says, "Well, this doesn't work." I said, "I tried to tell you, man." I said, "You got the singer, you got the right material." But anyway, yeah, it turned out it's a long process, and then another year of trying to find other singers, and I thought of you immediately, and so, but he didn't like that. There was another singer involved. He didn't like her. Finally, essentially what happened was he said, "Well, I'm getting tired of looking for a singer. Why don't I gift you this record?" Because he'd paid for all the musicians and paid for the studio. He says, "Why don't you take it from here and you shop around and try to find the right singer?" So I did. I shopped around again. He said, "But don't pick one of those other singers." That was the condition. I thought, oh, now I gotta, it's a big world of singers out there, but the one or two that I thought about using can't do the gig. So
It was I mean, it turned out perfect because
I thought,
Calabria just a gorgeous singer, and the whole involvement, she and Bob, and I mean, it was perfect. It worked out perfectly. What's the record called now?
well, it's called "In the Still of the Night."
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's on their label, Moco or something like that.
Oh yeah.
It's available, but I think some of the tracks are up on Spotify, or you can find them on YouTube.
Yeah, I wonder. Let me see if I can
Find
find
the tracks on
that. Because
YouTube.
yeah, that would be really nice to actually
Yeah.
YouTube in the still of the night.
Yeah,
In
just
the,
put in Calabria Foti in the Still of the Night, and it'll come up.
yeah, here it is. Okay, and um, let's see. Um, there's even Eddie Daniels comments on those. On Which song? In the Still of the Night, or
Ballad. Let's see.
just one of those things, or
Yeah, just one of those things turned out really nice. One I like a lot is So in Love. Is that there?
let's see. Oh, I don't know how that went to the wrong place. I went to. Oh, I see. Hold on. So goodbye. Let's see.
That's the promo. That's the promo.
Which song?
So in Love.
Let's see if I put.
See if you can find, yeah, put in the So in Love title. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Let's see. What if I do this and
Yeah, put it there.
okay. Wait a minute. My hands. So, oh geez, come on, Cathy. So in love. Uh,
The title's not coming up, is it?
no.
Maybe it's just, it says full.
Well, still in the night, still of the night. If I go back there,
Yeah, maybe it's.
do you happen to know which number it is? I could just play a little bit. So listen. Fun, but it was just.
Well, you can.
Oh, this is the promo.
Yeah.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
Try.
Oh, I see. Wait a minute. So here's the. Setting. Oh, this is the same thing.
In the parlor of some.
Okay, I guess we're not going to find exactly that. So
if you go down to over there to the other list just below that where it says 50 plus.
Down on the right?
On the right, it says in the Still of the Night CDP EPK. Maybe they show, maybe the tracks show up after the EPK.
No, let's see. Well, here's the EPK. You mean?
Yeah, go to the end of that and see what comes up.
Two hearts revealing. That's probably one of her other records.
That's one of the other records.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe I can do Spotify. Let's see.
Or yeah, or try that.
So in love, Calabria, Cody. No. Well, maybe I can do Amazon Music.
Maybe.
Or maybe we could just listen to, one of the other songs.
Or listen to one of the other tracks. They're all great. In the Still of the Night track is quite lovely.
So goodbye, dear, and amen. Here's hoping we'll meet now and then. It was great fun, but it was just one of those things.
Hi, I'm Calabria Foti. I'm so happy.
Hi, Calabria Foti. I'm going to try one more thing.
Sure.
I usually can find stuff I want on Amazon. Even me, I'm better at finding me. And where
on Amazon, really?
Let's see. I'm just going to sign in, and then come on, just sign in there. And music, Amazon Music. Ladies and gentlemen, you're probably getting bored with me. Gosh, I'm really not doing well today. Um,
Yeah, you're in all now, so you can just put in the title and probably come up, something will come up.
well, here's just one of those things.
Well, listen to that. Sure, why not?
It was just one of those things. Just one of those crazy flames. One of those bells that now and then rings. Just one of those things. It was just one of those nights. Just one of those fabulous flights. A trip to the moon on gossamer wings. Just one of those things. If we thought of it, about the end of it, when we started painting the town, we'd have been aware that our love affair was too hot not to cool down. So goodbye, dear, and amen. Here's hoping we'll meet now and then. It was great fun, but it was just one of those things. If we thought of it, of the end of it, when we started painting the town, we'd have been aware that our love affair was too darn hot not to cool down. And goodbye, dear, bye-bye, and amen. Here's hoping we'll meet now and then. It was great fun, but it was just one of those things.
Yeah,
Boy, is that beautiful.
nice track. Yeah. And, you know, I actually went to get Eddie to play on this thing.
Yeah.
We actually did it in Santa Fe. So
Oh,
I
is that
sent
where you live?
tracks out to his engineer. Eddie lives in Santa Fe.
Yeah.
So he wasn't coming to New York anytime soon. So I said, well, why don't I just come out and we'll record it in your studio? He's got like a nice room. We'll do it remotely, and we'll have as much time as we need, and we can finesse it, and you can give me your best solos.
He sounded beautiful on it. Yeah.
Doesn't he sound great? Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Beautiful.
so it was a lot of fun. I mean, there was a long process getting this record done. Oh man, I don't ever want to do a record like this again, ever.
Your arrangement was really beautiful, and Calabria sang so like perfectly for it. It's, she has that beautiful quality of tone. Her phrasing in the appropriate places, her phrasing was her own and free. And then when she would come together with your arrangement of specific things, it was quite beautiful. And your arrangement, used um, tension in great spots. Oh, it was just, yeah, really beautiful to listen to.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was a, Gene was on the date, and Gene and I have known each other for a long, long time, and it's not always easy for a pianist and a guitarist to work together. But because I did his last record, I did the arrangements, I conducted it. And I've heard Gene play for years. So it was like we could almost like finish each other's phrases and nobody would step on anybody's toes. That's really, it only comes from knowing how somebody plays and working with them either in the studio or getting to know them musically over a long period of time. So he was a real delight to work with, and rhythm section was so smooth. It was, I just had to stay out of the way.
What do you think the future of CDs is?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I've been having a conversation with Ann Perry about this. She wants to release a CD. And I don't know. I think CD releases in terms of like using the CD. If you know this as well as anyone, that if you're doing a concert or doing a club date or something where you can actually sell some product, that's great. That's maybe that's how people are going to actually recoup any portion, some infinitesimal amount on their investment, right?
Right.
Um, um, but I think the future of CDs, that's a really a big question. I'm always surprised with my Japanese friends. They want to buy like 30 copies of any CD that you make physically. They want the physical CD.
Yeah.
That's a
Well,
different.
that's why I don't throw. Honestly, that's why I'm not throwing out CDs, out of my garage, because I do go to Japan every year, and I
Yep,
sell 50 or 70 CDs every year.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Yeah, yeah. Are you still working with Phil over there?
No, I work. Let's see. I have been what I've been doing, and I was supposed to do it in March. Was I go a week in Hiroshima with a bass player friend of mine, then a week to Osaka and work with various musicians, and a week to Tokyo,
Right.
work with a friend of mine, Issei Igarashi, who's a really beautiful trumpet player, kind of like a Miles player, and teaching in Osaka and Tokyo a lot. And I make I make a nice taste there.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what kind of cultural shift there has to be for people to stop wanting to consume things immediately. Like just click, point and click, give me the gratification.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you might as well be asking the questions like, what's the future of your home sound system? Like, do you want to listen to music at home on a really great set of speakers, or do you want to listen on your computer? It's like, I'm not making CDs to be played on these tiny little speakers.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I don't think I get the impression that um, the creative people who think things and develop things, I don't think they've really thought that through yet. What you were just saying, like how do we set it up easily that people can set it up and have the bigger experience, and it's not too far from the okay, let me just move my mouse over and click
Yeah.
it. So but there is I think there is a step. I mean, for me, but I don't know how normal my household is, but I have a CD player in my kitchen with 6 spots in it, and I have speakers. Now, I probably do most of my listening there. And of course I do work in here, and I
Uh,
have some, pretty good speakers. And then I also have a CD player in the music room, which I don't use so much for CDs anymore. Mostly, my husband has like 10,000 records, vinyl.
I know. I've been out there.
Yeah. So what I do, a few times a week is I pull out a record, and you know what I just found, which was really an amazing record, but the whole thing was so great. So there was this singer named Toni Harper, who was a young woman, um, but this particular record, the introduction on the back was by Freddie Green, and it was the best songs out of Hal Levy's songwriting class at UCLA.
Wow.
And full orchestra with this girl, Toni Harper, who was also a student of his. She was 22. And she'd already had kind of delvings in show business. Like when she was 8, she was dancing on some big stage with somebody. When she was 10, she was on the Ed Sullivan Show. When she was, and she had a hit. I forget the name of it, but it was like a kid hit. But went platinum. And then she did some singing with some big jazz person who I can't quite remember right now. But and then when she was 22, she was in Hal Levy's class, and so whoever got money for it, and she sounded great. I mean, she was a great singer. She retired at 29.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
so I came across that record that I hadn't listened to yet, in the collection, and he has mostly rock and blues, but over the time that we've been together, I've like gone into his stash, that he's selling, and I'm like, hey, what's this? This looks kind of interesting.
There's so much great music out there. Somebody gave me an LP years ago, and I still have a record player, and so I put it on the other day. It was Nancy Wilson, a Broadway My Way or something like that,
Uh,
and it's Oliver Nelson charts, and
oh,
it's just unfriggin' believable. I mean, she's so fresh. The charts are so great
I
and
have to write that one down.
really swinging. Let me see if I can find it here. Hang on.
Oliver Nelson and Nancy, and I want to listen to that. While Michael's looking, tomorrow I'm going to have on Catalina Popescu.
There it is.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, Broadway My Way. Oh, I'm sorry. The orchestra's conducted, not Oliver Nelson. Orchestra conducted by Jimmy Jones. But these charts are phenomenal. Kenny Dennis is on it.
Oh wow, yeah.
Kenny, I met before I left LA. He used to come out to the High School for the Arts and work with the jazz program.
Yeah.
And he was a sweetheart. And of course, he played with Phineas Newborn, at one time. Unbelievable.
So
Yeah.
many unbelievable people.
Yeah, I mean, so much. It's like, it's the one big thing about America. I mean, I'm just going to be political or cultural here for a moment.
Yeah.
Um, there's just so much here, and it seems as if there's so little attention being paid to the cultural world that we have, and it's almost like the arts are just, I mean, you know, they really are the concern, the intellectual and the spiritual concern of the human race. Really, they're not just little techniques or, you know, entertainments. They really are the concern of our entire human race.
Yeah.
And it seems so sad that so much time is and energy is given to the superficial things and the things that have, you know, very little importance in the long run, or just, you know, people wanting to be entertained, or, you know, just, it's kind of like the whole problem we have in our country right now with people not wanting to wear a mask. They don't want to pay attention to the greater good. They just want their own selfish, you know, well, hey, if I wear a mask, does that mean that I'm, you know, you're controlling me or something? It's some weird kind of pretzel logic. But I just think that there's so much depth of, of, of and historical depth, um, of creation and creativity in this country that's just not even being explored. It's mind blowing, really.
It is mind blowing. I also have thought about that for years, and I know maybe this is a period of time where we can all band together and kind of
Yeah.
bring a lot of attention to the fact that I mean, it hurts my mind when I think about it, like what you just said, right? You know, it's like,
Sorry.
um, no, it's okay. I mean, I've thought of this before, but when I sit and think about the people in control of money and attention, and that when they take money away from the arts, they don't get it in the deepest possible depth. There's no inkling, it seems, that they understand that art is good for humanity. It's not just good for musicians or for artists. It's it. There's so much to it that is so, um, so valuable to humankind, and it just that's what hurts my head. It's just it just friggin' kills me. And of course, artists know, you know, but apparently we haven't. I don't know. Maybe we haven't banded together enough to, pound the hammer, and really get it across, to the
Oh no,
people.
that's a different part of the whole dynamic of how do you make that, uh, how do you make people more aware, I guess is what we're saying, or how do we, um, not that we need to convince anyone, but I think just sheer exposure, is a big thing. There's a lot of things competing for our attention, right,
Yeah.
on a daily basis.
Hmm.
Um, and I think it's a transformative thing to become more mindful. And if you give people a little taste of that, of what it's like to be more mindful, they're going to do one of two things. Either they don't want it because it just takes too much effort. So they'll go back to, I'd rather have my superficial life, or they buy into it wholesale, I think. I think those are the two things that happen. Just like a good student, right?
Yeah.
You throw out the bait, they either take the bait and you know that they're going to be successful.
Yeah.
Or you throw out the bait and they go, yeah, that's not quite for me, you know.
Right. Exactly.
And so they get the degree and they move on. They probably won't have a career, or they won't be a serious musician, but they'll have some, at least I've exposed them, or, that's sort of our job as teachers is, as you know, you teach lots of people. You got to throw it out there and see who, there's usually about a third, I find about a third, or, 3 out of 10 students are really into it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the normal percentage that I found.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
So I don't know how do you, if we're talking about like a cultural shift here in how does America build a culture besides the superficial kind of TV culture that we have, or kind of marginal concert going in large uh, areas like LA, New York, Chicago, maybe Nashville, some other emerging areas.
Yeah.
Aside from that, it's not like Europe where every small town's got a symphony. It's like we don't have that here. We do have quite a healthy regional orchestra, and chamber music in America has grown exponentially. So I think it's there, but it's not in our early training as it's not part of our culture the way it used to be. It used to be every house had a piano. Turn of the century, I think New York had like 20 piano stores because everybody had a piano in their apartment. Holy cow, what that
Hmm.
must have been like.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the base level, right? How do you create something that people actually it helps their humanity, it helps their way they see the world. It's, I mean, maybe it's an idealistic thing, but I think that we need more of it, not less. We don't need less budget for the arts. We need like 10 times the budget for the arts.
Yeah, and some ideas too. Like I have a friend who I had on, and her name is Alexia Vasiliou. She lives in Cyprus, and
Oh,
she's pretty well known, especially in that area. And but she did go to Berkeley, and she lived in L.A. for a while, and I think New York as well. Yeah, she did. And so she she's a refugee in Cyprus. When she was a child, the Turks came in and invaded, and she had to leave in the middle of, in
wow.
basically in the middle of the night. And she lives now on the part of Cyprus uh, that's not Turkish. And she, obviously was formed by this experience. And one thing that she did, well, she actually creates these amazing events, which she just did for the UN. And they're really so beautiful, humanitarian and musical, and it's just really beautiful. But what she started a program where she sold this idea to elementary schools, where this is a nonprofit program for her. So she brings music into the elementary schools to play over the loudspeakers while the kids are shifting from class to class, and the music is classical and jazz.
Wow.
Yeah, so she actually accomplished that, she had, I mean, that's
That's
pretty interesting accomplishment, isn't it?
Well, that's sort of a peak moment. It's like they're going between activities. The mind is maybe a little more dormant, a little more open
Yeah.
to receiving that. Uh, Curiosity. I mean, I think some people are just naturally curious. I'm one of those people, but I think developing that sense of curiosity in children is probably a noble thing to do. Um, to how do you, I guess the question is how do you get someone interested in something? um, Either they're naturally curious and want to know more about it, but sometimes they just have to be presented with that information or that sound. Or I don't know about you, but I remember the first time I heard Horace Silver it was at the jazz workshop. I was up at Berkeley when I was 13 years old. I was at Berkeley for that summer thing, and or 14, maybe I was 15. I don't know, maybe later. It might have been 16. You probably had to be 16 to go to that. So I was up there in the summer for a summer session at Berkeley, and I remember some of the older guys, snuck me into the jazz workshop, and I remember walking in there, and the first thing I heard was Horace Silver, Carmel Jones. It was a quintet starting up playing, who knows, one of their hip tunes. And I stood there and I went, that's it. That's what I've been wanting to hear.
Oh, that must have been great.
I mean, it was like, here, a young kid, I don't know crap about jazz or really anything about improvisation, but knew I was looking for something that made sense to me. To me, those guys moving a crowd and, presenting this amazing kind of spontaneous and energetic, just powerful music, just filled with intelligence and sheer beauty of playing. I thought, well, it doesn't get any better than this,
Well, I came up, my dad was a sax player and he had
Right.
bands. And so, and my two older sisters sang and one played piano. So we grew up singing and my mom was a singer. And so I definitely, and, I was listening to my dad's choice of music, which was, big bands and the high-lows and Ella Fitzgerald, and, so, and I loved it from the beginning. However, the very first group that I actually saw that blew me away, besides going, with my mother to hear Judy Garland, that kind of thing, but the jazz group, my sister took me to the jazz workshop. So I must have been, whatever, I don't know, 15 or maybe, I don't know.
Yes, same age.
And it was the Modern Jazz Quartet. And that room was so small, right? Remember, it was very small and intimate. And we were sitting in the front row, and I totally, it was a life-changing experience because the elegance and the aesthetic universe that they filled was just absolutely stunning. So I do remember that.
Yeah, very stylized, right? I mean, both of those groups, Horace Silver or
Uh,
the Modern Jazz Quartet, I think that was one of the things that really attracted me to jazz was that each voice was so unique. John Coltrane didn't sound like Betty Golson, and didn't sound like, you know, Miles didn't sound like Freddie, didn't sound like, you know, any other Art Farmer. All those. It was all so unique and really truly American in that sense that it was so individualistic, right? I think you find that in most American art. It's very, very unique. It's not part of a movement. If it is, it's kind of a one-off. It's kind of everyone's own impression about how things should be played or written.
yeah, it's very obvious in rock and funk and that genre too. Like
Yeah,
Marvin Gaye was totally different from Bill Withers, or I mean, you could go on and on. So distinct.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's American develop that whole period of time, from maybe the inception of jazz all the way up through blues and even late rock groups into the 70s. I think that was sort of our golden period, where there was a lot of experimentation and development. The aesthetics were, the culture was there. You could work 6 nights a week on a jazz gig.
Yeah. This is kind of a weird connection, but
Yeah.
excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. I was talking with Paul Jost yesterday. Do you know Paul?
No.
Oh, you got to know him. You have to look him up. Paul Jost.
Sure.
He's an incredible singer, and in this day and age, when the amount of male great jazz singers is definitely still less than women, I think.
I agree.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's also a a drummer, a real great drummer, but
Hmm.
he's been becoming more known as a singer. And anyway, he's a real dear heart as well. And so we were talking about all this stuff and what's going on, and he brought up Star Trek, and he said, you know, one reason we all loved Star Trek was because there was all different kinds of beings on board running. There was a black woman running the communication. There was some guy with a weird face and horns. You know, there was, you know, Spock. You know, there was all these different people back then, and we all loved it. We didn't say, "Oh, how could a black woman be running the?" You know, we didn't say that shit.
Yeah.
You know, and I just thought, yeah, man, we love individuality and joining together and celebrating all of it. We love that as a people, you know, and
Yeah.
you know,
Well, it makes sense to me. I mean, I think people in the arts are a lot more pliable that way. I mean, whatever prejudices you may have, I think they get erased pretty quickly when you get to know someone as an artist um, on any level. But I find that with most human beings, actually, I don't think the problems between the human beings. I think it's this imposed kind of, you know, the lack of intelligence that it takes to be a racist is just staggering to me.
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, staggering. You know,
Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't hold up historically on any level. You know, there are no inferior races. I mean, culturally, you look at all the great cultures in the world, none of them are stupid. There are people that become stupid, you know, become like jade. You know, I just think it's all about fear, and
definitely.
fear is a terrible thing.
Yeah, there's so many conversations going on about all this now. It's
Mm.
great. My friend Catherine Bostic, who's a movie composer, she, excuse me, she said some great things on her Facebook that I reposted, and
Yeah,
very human point of view. You know, not even black woman point of view. It's just human. I am a human, and we all need to get smarter and more sensitive and have more awareness, and all of us.
well, the problem is it takes a lot of work, you know, and most people, for some reason, people have gotten lazy. They're not willing to put in the work, you know, either to put, you know, to connect the dots or to change their behavior or to really think about things in a more humane way. Um, there, that's kind of where we're stuck, you know. That's why we have this diversity, you know, division in our culture right now. So, um, and I'm not even a good sociologist, but I do know that I just think things have got to change. You know, but comes with you know, people being willing to change, and also we need some leadership. So that leads the way. You know, that has voice of reason and clarity and humanity. I mean, that's what America is all about. It's really an idea. It's not really a culture in that sense that, well, if you go to America, you're going to get this. You know, it's like, no, it's a big idea. We're still trying to make this big idea work, but it takes a lot of people buying into the idea, you know, otherwise it becomes like fascism, you know. So, you know.
Michael, you just said it, man. That just made me want to cry. That is so true.
Yeah, yeah,
So true.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, so
That's amazing. I saw yesterday the Queen of England. She had like a 7 minute speech or something. You know, it was kind of short, but I mean, just watching her and listening to her. I'm not even English, but I still was like, she got the vote of confidence, man. She, first of all, she's been around a long time and she's been through a lot of history.
Mhm.
And just the way she's looking at the camera and talking and what she says, you just, you're like right on, it's just great. And like you said, leadership, it would be really,
It doesn't take much. It just takes the right words. And words are powerful. They really are. And they, when there's that much thought behind something, as you said, I think that she's done this a few times. She doesn't talk every day, but you know, maybe every 6 to 8 to 12 weeks, she'll, if something needs to be articulated, that's kind of what their gig is, right? As the
yeah,
queen, they sort of like the moral compass of, they take make an evaluation of the behavior or the moral compass of their subjects. It's like basically, but that's their gig, is to be articulate and to talk about things and not talk down to people, but just say, hey, this is, we in the sense, we'll get through this. Everybody needs to stay calm. This is going to have to happen. And start laying the groundwork for good behavior,
yeah,
proper behavior.
yeah,
Act like human beings.
yeah,
But when you got leadership that's not even acting like a even a basic human being, you got problems.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's like that in any institution, though. If you've got people at the top that are acting improperly or have a really sour attitude, the
It's even
company.
like that in clubs. You and I have worked in so many clubs.
Yeah,
When the top management is cool, everything is cool. When they
everything is
are
cool.
not, it's not. And you
Yeah.
really feel it.
Oh yeah. Been there, done that. Yeah. uh, yeah.
Larry Goldman, hello. He just got on. Listen to what he said. Just
There.
arrived, but have no idea where this is going. Is this a music subject or something else? No, and my purpose for these hangs is totally a hang, and it just happens that all the people I'm interviewing or hanging with are musicians. So we talk a lot about music, but we also talk about other stuff, and this is pretty pertinent stuff. Actually, I just saw Janice Siegel and Lauren Kinnan are doing this vocal gumbo twice
Mm.
a week. They on Thursdays they have like um, a happy hour, and then on Saturdays they have a show. And the happy hour yesterday was it had Christian McBride and his significant other Melissa. I wasn't familiar with her. She was really well spoken.
Hmm.
Patty Austin,
Mm.
Kurt Elling was on a little bit, but Patty Austin, she was not holding back at all, and
Yeah.
it led to a very lively, stimulating conversation. And Melissa also was extremely outspoken, and
It's
yeah,
articulate these things. It's like everything is so in flux. You think that's maybe somehow better behavior is going to be kind of to the forefront finally or something like that. But then you get all the social unrest that we have right now is it's pretty hard to look at. I
yeah,
go
and
with
also
turning it off for a couple of days and then just getting totally outraged. It's like I just can't hold my tongue.
also being artists, if we were, one time I got this idea, if we were on a different planet and we would be supported in all ways to be the empaths, so that we would go out into the world and we would soak up what was happening, and then we would show the leaders actually what was happening through our art or whatever, and that would be our job. I mean that.
I think it is our job. I mean, I noticed, I know a lot of the music that I write is generally, it's because of the circumstances of my life or some memory or some story that I heard about or some situation, I want to reflect the things that are in my life in real time as much as I can. I think that is our job. I, I, I'm with you that I feel as if right now we're kind of in this spot where we want to be creative, we want to do our work. And I've had this discussion with a number of writers where they just go, I sit down to write and the muse is not coming around. Or
I know so many people say that.
we work for a while, like I've got a couple of things I really need to get done. And I'll work for a while and then, somehow I just can't keep the line going. I can't keep the energy up the way it usually is when I'm working. So,
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? I mean, I don't have trouble. I mean, first of all, I'm not drawn into the practice room. If I get there, then of course I kind of have fun, but once I'm in there, I don't tend to practice a lot on my voice technique, which before I did. I practiced every day my voice technique. And now I'm like, I practice a little, and then it seems like my interest goes to something else.
yeah, yeah. I just think the energy is not there because it's not. Uh, Everybody is so concerned about survival right now.
Yeah.
It's everybody's kind of. I mean, on the one hand, you say that, and then you realize it's like you're not the only person that's been through tumultuous times like this. I remember reading about Prokofiev's Fifth Symphony. He wrote it right after he wrote the Piano Sonata Number 8. Took him a year to write that piano sonata. Okay, it was like in 1934 or something like that. This is, Russia's at war, everybody's at war. 36, and then a year later, he writes the Fifth Symphony. He writes it in 1 month,
Oh, wow.
and I'm going, boy, he must have met the right girl or something. It's like some, but why such a difference? Um, the creative process is interesting that way, where you know you have a fit of inspiration and boom, something comes out, um, or you struggle. You know, it's like doing your scales or warming up your voice or working on some specific thing that's you know an aspect of your technique that you have to address on a daily basis. So it's like you know somehow that's getting kind of a little bit of time, but not as much as it should, right?
Yeah. I mean, we are picking up, of course. We, especially the artists, everybody is, but the artists are more open for this kind of thing. We're picking up the general populace's uh, mood. And especially, knowing so many people as we do, we're we're connected to many people's ideas, and that it's airwaves. We're doing that, and I think that's why another reason why we're not focused on the muse is because there's so much. It's funny. It's a distraction, but it doesn't feel like a crazy wild distraction. It feels like an introspective distraction, doesn't it?
Yeah, I've just been kind of struggling to like everyone, I think, to keep a certain part of my day clear so that I have the mind space to do some work, whether it's just in my head or not. And my mornings are generally good with my routine of yoga and meditation and breathing exercises and doing things to keep my immune system up. I'm very concerned about that. So if I do that every day, and I have a good working morning, uh, practicing or whatever, then the rest of my day I can deal with. I can deal with the world from 1 o'clock on, you know, and after 4, it's time to like get some dinner together.
Have a drink.
A drink. Yeah.
um,
Maybe look at the news if I dare.
Actually, I haven't been drinking very much. It's interesting. And last night I had a drink because I had talked to Paul Jost, and he said he was making a chocolate martini, and it just sounded good. So I made Gary and I some chocolate martinis. But yeah, I haven't been drinking. So we were playing Scrabble. We had eaten dinner, gotten the Scrabble board out, had some chocolate martinis, and I got really high, and I was like, yeah, I don't really like this feeling right now. So
Yeah.
I don't know, interesting. Whatever.
It's almost like it's too much. I know. I mean, it's a curious thing, isn't it, when we spend so much time kind of isolated, that we realize how little we need. Like I remember ordering a lot of food because I'm getting all my food delivered. And one day I got all this food and I thought, gee, I'm going to make a bunch of this food, and I'm just going to eat because I had not had that many supplies in the house for quite a while. And so I ate all this food. And the next day I got up and I said, geez, I don't need all that. It's like rice and veggies and just enough protein to kind of keep things going. I don't need all that other stuff, bread and crackers and cookies. It's like, I don't need all that. The same thing happened when I ordered some wine, and I hadn't had any wine in the house probably for 6 weeks. And I get this order of wine. It's like 4 bottles of this great California wine. I'm going, wow! It's just a bottle. And before I knew it, I had like been sitting there, and I'd had like my 3rd glass. And I went, whoa! The next day I woke up and I said, oh, you don't need that much wine. Drink a glass at night, you're done. It's like the thought that you think you need it. So I think it's a curious thing about human behavior. So,
It is curious.
yeah. What do you need to be, existing and
Yeah.
taking care of the planet and being moderate?
Yeah.
It's all good stuff.
Well, believe it or not, it's been 2 hours.
Oh my God.
And
And we
I always say that because it's so surprising.
we just scratched the surface. Yeah. But we
Yeah.
music. I'm glad. Thank you so much for playing my music. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so wonderful to play
Larry,
your music and
and
to get.
Larry Goldman, I'll send you the tracks.
Yeah, Larry Goldman. And also I'll play some of your SoundCloud on the way out. But
Thank you.
anything you want to say to the people?
Oh, just stay sane, breathe, look into Tai Chi and Qigong and yoga and meditate and pray for peace.
Nice.
Mm.
And I will just say too that tomorrow I'm having Catalina Popescu on, who is the owner of Catalina's Jazz Club.
Sure.
Yeah, and actually they're going through a GoFundMe. They're I mean, I can't imagine what some of the clubs are going through, and I can't help imagining that some of them, might close, which I would hate to imagine. But Catalina's really does need money to stay afloat, and they need they put like $100,000 that they need, and I think they're up to about 45,000, which is quite wonderful. So.
Yeah.
But that should be really great to speak with her and tomorrow, and Catalina's has been around for so long, right? I mean,
She gave Dave Sloniker and I, we had a big band there in LA for about 3 years. And they were always very generous about opening their doors for us. We weren't pulling much of a crowd, but we sure did have a great band, so yeah, so they were very sweet about that. Yeah, a lot of these clubs are doing streaming. Like
Yeah.
they'll have like 2 or 3 musicians in the club come and play,
Right.
no audience, of course, or maybe just a few people. But at least then they can stream and charge. I think the Vanguard, or yeah, the Vanguard's charging like $7.
I know. The baked potato too.
Yeah, for I mean, if they get 100 people, then they've made a few bucks. So
Yeah, yeah. I know. It's amazing.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. Well, anyway, so she's tomorrow, and Pat Kelly, the guitar player, is on
Oh,
Sunday, and we're gonna have, yeah, I have a lot of wonderful people: Mitchell Foreman, Tim Weston, Christian Jacob, Pinky Winters, Roy McCurdy. So that's coming up the following week. So um,
I know those
come,
names.
yeah. So come and listen, and hang out.
Oh,
There's on my website, or even listed above here, there's an archive link. And what else? Oh yeah, I just wanted to tell you guys that the California Jazz Foundation, of which I'm a board member, they are a foundation specifically for jazz musicians in need, financial need. And so I have a link listed above, and if you feel like giving some money to them, that would be great. Also, you can go to their site, but they were supposed to have a fundraiser during this period honoring Johnny Mandel and Billy Mitchell. So they're going to do a virtual one in September, but they're looking for some high quality video performances, and they're looking for short testimonials, for support. So it's
aha.
just something to think about. Yeah, you might
Yeah,
do it too, Mike.
yeah. I'll take a look at that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and that's it.
All right.
That's what I said. I think, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, that's it for now. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So really fun hanging out with you.
Pleasure. We had so much fun playing music together. You and I think you and Julie Kelly and Sonny Wilkinson. You were my 3 gals that I wouldn't work with any other singers. That was it. I was not, and that's pretty much who I worked with when I was playing piano, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Be in touch.
Love
Thank
you much. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Ciao
See
for
you
now.
tomorrow.